Hello, I am at my mother's, hence the different setting and the spiritualisty type stuff. I didn't do that to make fun, sorry mum, it's just, that's what it is. I read Fantasyland, How America Went Haywire by Kurt Anderson, and I had some thoughts. Interesting read. It says it's a history of 500 years of America and how they ended up with such a conspiracy theory culture, especially on the right wing. The first section is technically true. It is technically. Oh no, there's a butterfly in here. I've got to get it out. It's technically true. It is 500 years. It starts with the Salem witch trials and kind of builds up the first 500 years as a time in which America fought for the right to believe in whatever they wanted. Any religion was possible. But it's interesting that it does bring up the Salem witch trials because 50 years before that, Essex, the county where I'm from, had its own witch trials. But essentially it's setting up America as a place in which people very much fought for the freedom to believe in their own thing. The next major section is about the 60s. A lot of people view the 60s as a time when leftist ideals really came to the fore, but Kurt points out that it was an explosion of everything. Greed, conspiracies, libertarianism, and the motto of the time was do your own thing, which essentially does sound very similar to every man for himself, and all of that is true, it can't be denied. I kind of think that hippies get a bad deal when it comes to modern pop culture because not only was there a lot of unintentional selfishness and it's kind of easy to laugh at them, but I think that there was also an explosion of underground art, good intentions and ideals, and that can't be ignored. I'm getting that butterfly. It's free. Incidentally, watch a documentary called Magic Trip about Ken Kesey's bus journey from San Francisco to New York. It is really good, really good. The other thing to remember is that the 60s, the hippie era, the 70s and so on, it did give rise to a lot of dangerous ideas such as mental illness not being real. They were just seeing reality or whatever, and having mental illness in my family, I can tell you that is a dangerous opinion. And everyone kind of operated on the if you want to believe it then you should, and everything was given the same level of respect and treatment, and people were pretty much encouraged to see their view as just as important as somebody else's, no matter how crackpot it sounded. And yeah, I agree with that. The next chapters in the book are several things like Disneyland, McCarthyism, plastic surgery, all different things that kind of builds up this image of Americans living in some kind of theme park where nothing is quite real. It gets very listy. I got quite impatient with it. It can get a little bit boring, and I did put it down and read other things and then come back to it. And then suddenly it gets to chapters about the 80s, the Satanic Panic, then onto the Illuminati, Alex Jones, Islamophobia, anti-vax and gun control, and I could not put it down. It was fascinating. I don't quite agree with him on things though. He does point out that the right's emphasis on religion is blocking pro-choice treatment for women. Ireland, is only just catching up to this, it's a tenuous thing. He says that devout Christianity increased in the Republican Party and all of these new religious elements were added. And this is one of the major reasons why far-right conspiracies are so mainstream now, because, they've gone from crazy fringe groups to, Alex Jones having direct communication with the president, which is really scary. Also, I liked what he said about the NRA and gun control, anti-gun control fanatics mainly being so hysterical because they are living a fantasy of the outsider, the one who's going to save everyone when the apocalypse comes. It's not because they genuinely think, or perhaps they do, I don't know. It's not because they genuinely think that they need that gun or that many guns day to day. It's because of this image they've got in their head of how they're going to be the hero. And all of these people have kind of learned to see liberal folk and everything that happens as a liberal conspiracy, which began in the McCarthy era. A kind of liberal conspiracy began there, the seeds were sown, and now it's a general mainstream belief. So it's kind of like people have consolidated all of their enemies into one manageable tyranny. But Kurt is also suspicious of LARPers, people who love Disney too much because they're not living in reality, and he says that the internet has caused instant gratification, which is true, it has. I mean, let's be honest. But this is kind of where I disagree with Kurt a lot, because, I mean, if you look at me and my outfits and the fact that Bill and I kind of created a magical place called the Magic Forest, where it's just messing around. We joke about this place where everything's happy all the time. I mean, I think it's probably because I am not happy all the time, so I invented somewhere where I could be. But I'm not daft. I know what's real and what isn't, and granted, there are people that do not. But if you're really obsessed with Disney and you like to dress up as a Disney character and you want to live in Celebration, which is the Disney town, good for you. I also think it's too simple to just blame religion, because it's not religion that's telling people to act this way, it's the people. But rather than the whole thing being because America's lost touch with reality, although yeah, I think some of them have, it's more because we're seeing a kickback to people who previously had no voice finally starting to get one. The internet in general, yes, it has caused instant gratification, but it has also allowed people who were previously silent to be able to say their thoughts and their reality and their truth, and for people to hear them. And I think that the amount of anger, like for example yesterday on a Twitter moment about just someone who was saying, how do I tell my family that my girlfriend is trans? The comments beneath were disgusting. And I think things like that, I think right-wing conspiracies and so on are so prevalent at the moment because people are realising that they're losing their grip on the amount of power that they have, and that they're going to have to take a step back and listen to some other people for one. So rather than a collective and bleak slide into a fantasy world, also he weirdly says at the end that we've got to fight against political correctness, which is just out there with no explanation. And okay, Kurt, I'm much more optimistic about the whole thing. I mean, not about the way people are behaving, trust me, but about hopefully where we can go from this. And yes, I think we have to push back on people who are convinced that global truth is subjective, such as the climate change thing. Like, come on, we're going to kill the planet if we don't actually do something. But rather than the Fantasyland being the cause, I think it's the symptom. It's the symptom of people desperately clinging on to truths that they once had that they're now losing. And those are my thoughts. Interesting book. Disagreed with him quite a bit. Although he does mention, which got me excited, a bit about augmented reality and how he wants to try it. And I do really want to do like a horror game where you put on glasses or just press a button or whatever, and you can wander around your house and see ghosts and things like that. I've mentioned this before, but it sounds brilliant. I will have to go to the toilet first or something though, because I imagine I'll get quite scared. But anyway, so Fantasyland, How America Went Haywire by Kurt Anderson. Definitely worth reading, some really good information in it. I believe different things to him, but it's probably worth a read. Okay,